Is high, so it's gonna beep at me a little, but it's coming down as I walk around. Walking feels good. But yeah, it's gonna beep at me as I read from Understanding Our Mind. I read from this book yesterday and the day before. And if you want to hear more from this book, you could look at my channel and look at the live videos. But for now, we will continue learning about this direct perception. Direct experiential understanding arises with that direct perception. And in this system of Buddhist psychology, we learn about 3 modes of perception. Yesterday, that's what we were talking about. So direct perception is unmediated by the sense minds. So it can't be just another thought or another sight or sound or taste or smell or tactile sensation. These direct perceptions, this direct experiential understanding is special. And early Christians also talked about this. They called it gnosis. It's a special kind of knowing. And it's funny because, Greek gnosis is a Greek word. It's related to the Sanskrit word jnana. And this jnana means basically the same thing. It's a special, basic kind of knowing. And then, as we've been learning about Buddhist psychology, we keep running into that word, jnana, a certain form of that word. And that form is preceded by the prefix v, vijnana. V means to split. So this word that's being translated as consciousness all over this book that we're reading, this word is a specific kind of consciousness. And I kind of wish Thich Nhat Hanh would have, talked more about that or about that at all. Because we see that it's dualistic. It's split. And that's a wonderful hint. It's a clue that we can use to help make sense out of what's being said about consciousness. So in this system that we've been talking about, there are 8 vijnanas. 8 streams of dualistic discrimination. And dualistic discrimination is what thought is built from. Every thought is dualistic. Every word is dualistic. The thoughts and words won't make sense outside of the context of dualism, the system that the mind has created over beginningless time. So, it's important to recognize that this consciousness is dualistic. And there's 8 layers. So Thich Nhat Hanh is commenting in this book on 50 verses from an ancient Buddhist teacher named Vasubandhu. He was a Buddhist psychologist. He and his brother did a lot to help Buddhism engage with the deep teachings on mind and clarify certain things. So the first 6 consciousnesses or vijnanas, the Buddha talked about them all the time. And when the Buddha talked about the world, loka dhatu, he was talking about the field of activity of these 6 streams of dualistic discrimination. And it's important to recognize that the Buddha saw the mind, the activity of mind, playing a huge role reality. We help to create it. We are participating in creating this reality through the activity of the vijnanas. The world is created by the activity of the vijnanas. When we think of the world, we're thinking of some aspect of these vijnanas. So, the world is mind-made. And these Buddhist psychologists, Vasubandhu and Asanga, his brother, they made it very clear that the world is mind-made, but they weren't doing anything new, and they weren't making things up. They were just presenting ancient teachings, even at their time, ancient teachings in new ways, with new language. So they added 2 vijnanas on top of the 6 that the Buddha talked about, that the early Buddhists talked about. And those 2 are manas vijnana, which is like the layer of mind that habitually perceives things as self. It takes a region of the mind and it says, I am this. This is mine. I am in this. So the Buddha talked a lot about this tendency, but he didn't call it manas vijnana. So adding it to the mind system, or to the system that's used to discuss mind and understand mind, adding it makes sense. So there's manas vijnana, and then what we're talking about now, store consciousness, that is alaya vijnana. Alaya vijnana is like the soil of the mind. Manas vijnana is like a farmer that, marks out a region of that soil, that field, and it says, this is me, this is mine. And it doesn't ever question that. It goes on, thinking that it's me and it's mine, until a being encounters the Dharma and reassesses. So there's some background context. Now I'll read. All images, and images are the 3rd mode of perception, mere images. Pure imagination might be another way of talking about it. And then the next mode was representation. And we've been talking about direct experiential understanding, which is gnosis, which is not mediated by the vijnanas. So all images, whether we perceive them in the mode of representations or the mode of mere images not connected with suchness, all images are false. And that's a huge point. They are not a direct perception of things in themselves. And this phrase, thing in itself, is a phrase that was really popular in Western philosophy. Philosophers argued about things in themselves. Do we ever contact anything in itself? Or are we only experiencing the activity of our mind? The Buddha would say there is a way to directly contact the thing in itself, but that way is not thinking, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. So all images are false. Seeing a sight, it's then seeing, oh, there's this plant. We're talking about representations, images. All images in the ultimate analysis are false. things as self, as permanent, as inherently real, which is just another way of saying they are always what we think they are. And another one of these misperceptions is that things can be truly satisfying. So, all images are false, but some images can be useful. Some representations can be useful. The Buddha used tons of images and representations in order to point the way to dismantling suffering. So, all images are false. That doesn't mean they're not useful. According to Buddhist psychology, we live much more in the world of representations and mere images than in the world of direct experiential understanding. So, direct experiential understanding is possible, but it's rare. A Buddha is a super rare being who has perfected direct experiential understanding to the point that they can then engage in representations and images. They can use them to help others attain their own direct experiential understanding. Suppose you're walking in a field at dusk. In the path ahead, you see a long curving shape that you recognize as a snake. So there's an image, this long curving shadowy thing. It calls up the image of snake. And then there are all these other associated images that arise with it, like danger, snake, danger, run away. So you become frightened. Then someone shines a flashlight on the snake, and you discover that it is in fact only a piece of rope. So now we see that this representation of snake, in this case, is just mere image. It doesn't correspond to what's actually there. The fear you felt was the result of a wrong perception. Seeing a piece of rope, you touched the image of a snake. You did not touch the realm of reality in itself. You did not touch suchness. But instead, you touched the realm of mere images and all the associated mental factors that arise by calling up that mere image of the snake. So in this case, somebody came by with a flashlight and shone the light on the apparent snake, and there was no snake there, and the fear fell apart. And the Buddha is like this person with the flashlight. Buddha goes around shining this flashlight into our minds, showing us that what we fear, what we're addicted to, what we are averse to, what we're apathetic about, these things are different than we imagine them to be. Much of the suffering we experience every day comes from our false perceptions, unskillful thinking, and the wrong views that arise. Hindus and Muslims, Palestinians and Israelis have a lot of fear because of their images of one another. Wrong views, misperceptions, misunderstanding. Because they are realm of representations, they continue to make themselves and others suffer. We live day in and day out in the realm of mind, of representations, and they are full of errors and improper discriminations. We suffer because of this. There are wars because of this. Some people have more than they could ever use, and most people don't have enough because of this. The first 5 consciousnesses, the vijnanas I was talking about earlier, the sense consciousnesses of eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, are capable of touching the realm of things in themselves, especially when they contact their objects of perception without the participation and intervention of mind consciousness. So that's kind of tricky. He's saying we can have accurate perceptions of reality as it is. But it's easier to have those when we don't flavor our perceptions with our thinking, with our mano vijnana, mind consciousness. And in some cases that will be true. Thinking less about perceptions will be helpful. But when we habitually misperceive through eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, then clear thinking, skillful thinking about perception will be useful. Lots of teachings in Buddhism are like this. Conditional. It's like under these conditions, this is good. Under those conditions, this same thing is bad. The Buddha teaches this way because he understands dependent origination. All things depend on all other things for their arising. All things are the way they are because all other things are the way they are. So things are the way they are because of conditions. Under some conditions, one mental factor could be good and useful. Under other conditions, and in this world there are many conditions always transforming. Under other conditions, the same mental factor might not be good. So it's useful to avoid coming to definite views too early. Like this is bad, this is always bad. That usually ends up to be, not true. What is good here is it's bad somewhere else. What's bad here might be good somewhere else. It's hard to make clear, definite assertions until, Buddhahood, until you become a Buddha. It's good to learn how to suspend judgment. So, when mind consciousness gets involved, there will be some thinking and imagination. And the image brought to it by one of the sense consciousnesses will become distorted by that wrong thinking and that false imagination. When we see a table, what we perceive as a table belongs to the field of representations. Because our perception has a lot of mind consciousness in it. So when we say really talking about our eye, ear, nose, body perceptions. We're talking about all these ideas we have around tables. When we see a table, what we perceive as table belongs to the field of representations. Termites see the same table as a source of food, so they experience a different table. Whether we view the table as food or a surface, our perception of it is not occurring in the realm of suchness. Anything touched in the realm of things in themselves, in the realm of suchness, by a sense consciousness, and then processed by intellect, these become representations. Yet, even our mind consciousness can touch the realm of things in themselves from time to time. So, thinking can contact the realm of suchness too. When we have a strong intuition, our mind consciousness is in touch with the realm of suchness. Intuition is a form of knowing that is not based in thinking and imagining. And what Thich is calling intuition, I would call it gnosis. And my hands are freezing, and I'm out of the forest, so I'm going to end the video. Thank you for being there. Bye-bye.